Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive all about creating lasting behavioral change.
We're going to be using triggers, creating behavior that lasts by Marshall Goldsmith.
Oh yeah, this book is it's awesome. It's packed with these fascinating insights into the hidden forces that shape our actions.
We're going to look at how our environment is constantly nudging us in different directions.
And we'll definitely give you some real positive shifts you can make.
Yeah, we'll talk about the power of active questions today.
Ooh, yeah, those are good.
And discover the influence of structure, like how powerful just simple structure can be.
So by the end, you'll have a toolkit of actionable takeaways.
To really level up your own life.
And to help you guys remember it all, we're going to pull together a 10-point summary at the end.
Yeah, we're going to make sure you leave here ready to make some changes.
Yeah, so the book kicks off with this powerful anecdote about a guy named Phil.
Oh yeah, Phil.
Who had this scary fall down his basement stairs.
He thought he was paralyzed for a second.
Oh gosh, yeah, it was a serious tumble.
And this near-death experience, it really ignited a wave of regret in Phil.
Regret?
Yeah, he started reevaluating his whole life, his
No.
choices, his priorities.
He was examining, how he was showing up in his
It
relationship.
wasn't just about, fear or needing help someday. It was about, aligning his actions with a deeper sense of purpose.
So it's like a wake-up call to be more present and intentional in his life.
Exactly.
Okay, so he had this neighbor, Kay, and she was just so incredibly kind and supportive after his fall.
Yeah, Kay was really there for him.
And this made him realize he wanted to be a better friend to her.
Not out of obligation, but because he genuinely valued that connection.
Right, like he wanted to reciprocate that kindness and be there for her in the same way that she had been there for him.
Exactly. That distinction is key.
Okay.
Goldsmith really stresses that, productive regret isn't about dwelling in the past,
Right.
but about leveraging it to fuel personal growth.
Using it as a catalyst for positive change. I think Phil's story is such a powerful example of this idea of environmental triggers.
Oh, absolutely.
The notion that our surroundings are constantly bombarding us with all these subtle cues that influence our behavior.
Yeah, without us even realizing it.
Right, it's like we're on autopilot sometimes.
Totally.
And these triggers can completely derail even our best laid plans.
Think about it. Have you ever mindlessly reached for a sugary snack?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Even though you had vowed to eat healthier,
Like those cookies in the pantry just calling my name.
That's your environment subtly shaping your actions.
Sneaky little environment.
But the good news is, once we understand these triggers,
Right.
we can start to consciously design our surroundings.
To support the changes we want to make.
Exactly.
So it's like we're taking control of our environment instead of letting it control us.
Right. It's about being proactive.
I mean, it really makes you wonder how much of our behavior is actually driven by conscious choice.
Versus these, subconscious environmental cues.
Yeah, it's a fascinating question, isn't it?
And that's precisely what Goldsmith explores in the book.
Okay.
He argues that while we might believe we're in control a lot of the time,
Right.
our environment often has a much stronger grip on our actions than we'd like to admit.
But even when we recognize the need for change, it's not always an easy journey, is it?
Oh, absolutely not.
Goldsmith shares a story about Harry.
Harry.
He was a successful COO, but he was kind of self-sabotaging.
Yeah, his career and his relationships with his just abrasive behavior.
Oh, gosh.
But he was really good at his job.
So Harry's story shows how those internal roadblocks
Like ego or fear.
can really hold us back even when change would clearly benefit us.
He resisted coaching despite the potential for improvement.
It's like that classic example of someone who knows they should quit smoking but struggles to actually break the habit.
Right, the knowledge is there, but those deep-seated patterns, those
They can
habits.
keep us stuck. So Goldsmith really delves into 15 common beliefs that can prevent us from achieving our goals.
These beliefs act like sneaky little saboteurs,
Oh, yeah.
whispering excuses and rationalizing inaction.
So we'll definitely unpack some of those later in our deep dive.
We'll explore those beliefs in detail.
But he doesn't just leave us hanging with those beliefs. He actually provides a framework for breaking free from those self-imposed limitations, right?
Absolutely. He introduces the concept of feedback loops,
Feedback loops.
using the simple yet brilliant example of radar speed displays.
You mean those signs that flash your speed back at you?
Exactly.
Oh, I've definitely slammed on my brakes after seeing one of those.
See, they work
They do work.
because they tap into this four-stage feedback loop.
Okay.
You see your speed, you realize you're exceeding the limit, you fear a potential ticket.
Right.
And this triggers an immediate action slowing down.
Makes sense.
So how do we apply this concept of a feedback loop to personal change.
Yeah, that's the billion-dollar question.
Goldsmith encourages us to create similar loops in our own lives
Yep.
by setting clear goals, tracking our progress,
Okay.
and establishing consequences for veering off course.
So it's about building in those accountability measures and making sure we're consistently getting feedback on our progress.
Exactly. Constant feedback helps us stay on track.
This actually reminds me of another great idea from the book, the 3 critical intervals between a trigger and our response.
Oh, yeah.
Goldsmith breaks them down as impulse awareness and choice.
That moment of awareness is where the magic happens.
It's like that pause, that split
Then-
second where we can either react automatically or choose a different path.
Exactly. It gives us the power to override those impulsive reactions.
So it's about becoming more mindful of those triggers and creating that space for conscious choice.
It's about taking control.
I love that.
He also draws a parallel to this concept called situational leadership,
Interesting.
where leaders adapt their style based on the individual needs of their team members. And he suggests that we can apply this internally, adjusting our approach to self-management, depending on the situation.
So sometimes we might need to be more directive with ourselves, while other times we thrive on greater autonomy.
Right. It's about being flexible and recognizing that our needs evolve over time.
So it's like being our own coach, adapting our strategies based on what we need in that moment.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's talk about one of my favorite takeaways from the book, the power of active questions.
Active questions, yes.
They are so simple, yet so powerful.
incredibly effective.
Goldsmith is a huge fan of questions that start with, did I do my best to?
Such a great framework.
Like, did I do my best to be fully present during that conversation?
Or, did I do my best to stay focused on my priorities today?
These questions really force us to take ownership of our actions, don't they?
They shift our focus from external factors to our own efforts.
Instead of blaming circumstances or other people,
We turn the spotlight inward.
and ask ourselves what we could have done differently.
It's about accountability.
I remember there's this great story in the book about Goldsmith's daughter.
Yeah, his daughter.
She had this amazing insight into how these active questions work.
She's brilliant.
She pointed out that instead of asking, do I have clear goals?
We can ask, did I do my best to set clear goals for myself?
That subtle shift in language is so powerful.
It changes everything.
It's about acknowledging that even if we didn't achieve the desired outcome,
We still have control over our effort.
and even if we don't always hit the mark, the simple act of trying has its own benefits.
Oh, absolutely.
There's the sense of accomplishment and satisfaction that comes from putting in the effort.
Even if we don't achieve perfection.
Right, and Goldsmith encourages us to track our progress,
Not just to measure our results.
but to acknowledge and appreciate our efforts.
It's like keeping a journal of our journey, reminding us how far we've come.
Yeah, and motivating us to keep going.
It's all about momentum.
And this brings us to another crucial concept from the book, the importance of coaching
Coaching, yes.
in supporting lasting change.
Having a coach, even for seemingly personal goals,
Right.
provides structure, accountability, and, that invaluable support.
And it doesn't have to be a formal coaching relationship, does it?
Not at all.
It could be a friend, a family member, or even a colleague.
Anyone who can provide that support and accountability.
I remember that story about Emily, who successfully lost weight with her uncle acting as her informal coach.
Oh, yeah, Emily's story.
It was just her uncle's simple act of checking in with her each night that made all the difference.
Just that little bit of accountability can be so powerful.
It highlights how even informal coaching can make a huge impact.
Coaches act as a bridge between our aspirations and our actions.
They offer a fresh perspective and a gentle nudge when we need it.
They help us stay on track.
And Goldsmith emphasizes that these principles don't just apply to those traditional self-improvement goals.
They're applicable to all areas of life.
Right. He specifically talks about how these principles can help us navigate interpersonal challenges too.
He tells this amusing story about Griffin, who overcame his intense annoyance with his wife's ice clinking habit.
Oh, Griffin and the Ice.
Classic example of how we can choose our responses even in those small, seemingly insignificant moments that can really grate on our nerves.
It's about taking control of our reactions instead of letting them control us.
Exactly.
So Griffin consciously chose to reframe his reaction to focus on being a supportive husband.
Rather than letting his annoyance dictate his behavior.
It shows how we can actually harness awareness to improve our relationships.
It's a powerful example.
And it's a reminder that we often have more control over our reactions than we realize.
We always have a choice.
Goldsmith also stresses that we should choose goals that genuinely matter to us.
Because our motivation will be stronger when we truly believe in the changes we're striving for.
Yeah, it's about connecting our efforts to a deeper sense of purpose.
Yes.
Okay, now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the power of structure in fostering lasting change.
Structure is key.
Goldsmith provides this compelling example of Alan Mullally's leadership at Ford
Oh, yeah, Mulally.
and how he implemented this structured meeting format with clear agendas and a simple color-coded system for reporting progress.
It seems deceptively simple, but the impact was huge.
It sounds like it really helped to streamline communication and decision-making
It fostered accountability and transparency.
and ultimately transform the company's culture.
From the top down.
So what you're saying is that we can apply this same principle to our own lives.
Absolutely, even in small ways.
Even simple routines like making your bed each morning or blocking out time for focused work.
Can enhance your discipline and productivity.
Structure isn't about restriction.
It's about creating a framework that supports your goals.
So it's like building those scaffolding to support those new habits we're trying to develop.
Exactly. It's about setting ourselves up for success.
And this brings us to Goldsmith's concept of ego depletion, which explains why our willpower tends to fade as the day progresses.
It's a fascinating concept.
It's like our capacity for self-control is a muscle that gets tired after overuse.
As we navigate the day, making decisions, resisting temptations, and, dealing with stress,
Our willpower gradually depletes.
it gets worn down.
So that's why we're more prone to make unhealthy choices or snap at our loved ones later in the day.
Exactly. Our willpower just runs out.
We're running on fumes.
So Goldsmith recommends strategically structuring your day to minimize ego depletion.
By tackling those demanding tasks or interactions earlier on when our willpower is at its peak.
Exactly. Front load those challenging activities when you're feeling fresh.
So if I need to have a difficult conversation, I should do it first thing in the morning.
When your self-control reserves are full.
And don't forget to prioritize rest and recovery to replenish those self-control reserves.
Absolutely. Self-care is essential.
It's about treating yourself with the same kindness and consideration you'd extend to others.
You deserve it.
Now, Goldsmith challenges this idea of satisficing, which is basically settling for good enough.
It's a common trap.
While this approach might work for choosing a brand of cereal.
It can be really detrimental when applied to our relationships.
So instead of just meeting the bare minimum in our interactions with loved ones and colleagues,
We should strive to go above and beyond.
investing that extra effort to truly nurture those connections.
Our relationships deserve more than just good enough.
And then he introduces this fascinating idea of pro bono excuses
It's a way of justifying a lower level of effort or even non-compliance.
for commitments we view as optional or less important.
Like agreeing to help with a bake sale for your kid's school even though you're already swamped with work.
You view it as pro bono work, so you don't feel as obligated to give it your full attention.
Right, you might cut corners or even back out at the last minute.
But Goldsmith argues that this mindset undermines our integrity.
It sends the message that we're not truly reliable.
He contrasts this with Francis Hesselbein, who declined a White House invitation to honor a prior commitment to a community event.
Talk about integrity.
It's a powerful reminder that true integrity is revealed not in those grand public gestures,
But in consistently honoring our commitments.
even those that seem small or insignificant.
It's about walking the walk.
Okay, he then delves into the negative impact of breaking agreements, even seemingly minor ones.
It erodes trust and conveys disrespect.
It's like that friend who's always late or cancels plans at the last minute.
Eventually, you start to question their dependability overall.
So Goldsmith challenges us to examine our own patterns of noncompliance.
Are we truly holding ourselves accountable for our actions?
Are we striving for consistency in our behavior, even when no one is watching?
It's about becoming someone others can depend on.
Someone whose actions align with their words.
That's integrity.
This emphasis on integrity ties back to the importance of structure
Absolutely.
and creating lasting change.
Structure helps us conserve willpower
Right.
and resist those impulsive choices that can often lead to non-compliance.
Remember Alan Mulally at Ford.
Yes, the structured meetings and clear accountability.
By implementing those systems,
He fostered an environment where everyone knew what was expected of them.
and they were held accountable for their actions.
It's about setting clear expectations.
so we can apply those same principles to our personal lives,
Absolutely.
using structure to support our goals and build those habits of integrity.
Structure is a powerful tool.
Okay, now let's dive into some of the specific stories and examples that Goldsmith uses to illustrate these concepts.
Stories are so powerful for making these ideas relatable and memorable.
Absolutely. One story that really stands out is about Phil, who experienced that terrifying fall down the basement stairs.
Oh, yeah, fellow.
That near-death experience really shook him up and sparked this wave of regret.
It made him reevaluate his priorities
But Goldsmith emphasizes that there's a difference between wallowing and regret.
and channeling it productively.
Phil's story shows how we can use those feelings of regret to fuel personal growth.
To motivate positive change.
Then there's the contrasting story of Harry, the successful COO, who was undermining his own success with his abrasive behavior.
Harry was a classic case of someone who needed coaching but resisted it,
He was so focused on proving himself.
that he couldn't see the impact of his behavior on others.
It's a reminder that even the most successful people can have blind spots,
We all have areas where we can grow and improve.
and that asking for help is not a sign of weakness.
It's a sign of strength and wisdom.
And then there's that inspiring story of Emily, who successfully lost weight with her uncle serving as her informal coach.
Emily's story highlights the power of support and accountability.
Even just having someone check in with us regularly can make a huge difference.
It's like having a cheerleader in your corner.
And it's not just about those traditional self-improvement goals.
Right. Goldsmith emphasizes that these principles apply equally to interpersonal challenges.
He uses that great example of Griffin, who overcame his irritation with his wife's ice-clinking habit.
Griffin's story is so relatable.
It's a reminder that we can choose our responses even in those small, seemingly insignificant moments,
We can choose to be patient, kind, and understanding.
even when it's hard.
Absolutely.
Okay, now let's dive into some of those limiting beliefs that Goldsmith warns us against.
These beliefs can act like sneaky saboteurs holding us back from achieving our full potential.
One of the most common ones is the belief that we have the wisdom to accurately assess our own behavior.
We tend to overestimate our abilities and underestimate our need for improvement.
Goldsmith shares some fascinating research revealing that a staggering 98.5% of professionals believe they're in the top half of their peer group.
Talk about an inflated sense of self.
Right, it's like we're all wearing rose-colored glasses when we look at ourselves.
Which can prevent us from seeing those areas where we need to grow.
And then there's that classic, I'm waiting for the right time excuse.
It's the ultimate procrastination tool.
We tell ourselves that change will magically become easier or more convenient sometime in the future.
But as Goldsmith points out, there's rarely a perfect moment to embark on a journey of personal growth.
And another common belief is that we have the willpower to resist temptation.
We often overestimate our ability to withstand those alluring distractions and cravings.
It's like thinking we can stroll through a bakery untouched while on a sugar-free diet.
Our willpower is often weaker than we'd like to believe.
Goldsmith reminds us that we're not superhuman.
Relying solely on willpower is a recipe for failure.
Instead, he suggests building structures and systems that support our goals.
Taking some of the pressure off our willpower?
If we surround ourselves with healthy options, we're less likely to succumb to those unhealthy cravings.
It's about making it easier to make good choices.
Okay, and then there's that belief that we can change anytime we want.
As if change is simply a matter of flipping a switch.
It's tempting to think we have that level of control over our behavior.
But Goldsmith stresses that change is a process, not an event.
It requires consistent effort and a willingness to navigate the inevitable setbacks. And there's that belief that we shouldn't need help or structure.
Pride can be a major obstacle on the path to improvement.
We might resist admitting we need guidance or support.
Viewing it as a sign of weakness.
But Goldsmith challenges that belief.
Arguing that seeking help is a sign of strength and wisdom.
And then there's that seductive belief that an epiphany will suddenly transform our lives.
We love those stories of dramatic overnight transformations.
But Goldsmith cautions us against relying on those instant conversion experiences.
Lasting change requires a strategic approach.
Not just a burst of inspiration. And then there's that belief that our efforts will be fairly rewarded.
We like to think that if we work hard, good things will happen.
But life isn't always fair.
Goldsmith encourages us to focus on intrinsic motivation,
On the satisfaction that comes from pursuing goals that align with our values.
regardless of external recognition or reward.
Okay, and speaking of those unexpected moments, let's circle back to the idea of environmental triggers.
They can either support or sabotage our efforts to change.
It's amazing how our surroundings constantly shape our behavior without us even realizing it.
It's like we're on autopilot sometimes.
I think we've all experienced those moments where we're suddenly overcome by a craving for junk food, even though we'd resolved to eat healthier.
It's those environmental cues at work.
Goldsmith encourages us to be mindful of those triggers that lead us astray.
And to consciously design our surroundings to support the changes we desire.
So if we're trying to eat healthier, we might remove those tempting snacks from our pantry and replace them with healthier options.
Exactly.
And if we're trying to be more productive, we might create a dedicated workspace, free from distractions.
It's about taking control of our environment.
It's about recognizing that our environment isn't just a neutral backdrop.
It's an active participant in our journey to change.
And it's not just about our physical surroundings.
It's also about the people we surround ourselves with.
And the experiences we choose to engage in.
We have the power to shape our environments.
To support our growth, both physically and emotionally.
We're not just passive recipients of our circumstances.
They're active agents who can design our lives.
To align with the people we want to become.
Okay, now that we've laid the groundwork by exploring those key concepts from the book, let's delve into some of Goldsmith's more nuanced insights
Let's uncover those hidden patterns of behavior.
and examine the subtle ways we interact with the world around us.
I'm excited to dig deeper.
Me too. Let's see what other gems we can unearth from triggers.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's unpack those 15 beliefs that Goldsmith says can really sabotage our efforts to make lasting behavioral change.
Oh yeah, those sneaky beliefs.
They often operate like under the surface, subtly undermining our progress.
Yeah, they're like those gremlins in the engine.
Exactly.
So he starts with the belief, I have the wisdom to assess my own behavior.
Which is a dangerous assumption.
Yeah, because we all have blind spots when it comes to ourselves, right?
We're notoriously inaccurate when it comes to evaluating our own strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, I think we tend to be a little bit more generous with ourselves than we are with others.
Oh, absolutely. Goldsmith actually, he shares some research that found that a whopping 98.5% of professionals believe they're in the top half of their peer group.
Wow, 98.5%? That's almost everybody.
It's crazy.
You're talking about an inflated sense of self.
It really illustrates how our self-perception can be totally skewed.
Yeah, preventing us from acknowledging those areas where we need to grow.
We're not even aware of the need for improvement.
And closely linked to that is the belief, I'm waiting for the right time, which is the ultimate procrastination strategy.
Oh, yeah. It's so tempting to believe that change will magically become easier or more convenient sometime in the future.
But as Goldsmith points out, there's never really a perfect moment to embark on a journey of personal growth, is there?
Never. The stars rarely align perfectly.
We've all fallen into that trap, haven't we? I'll start exercising next week, or I'll finally clean out my closet next month.
But delaying only prolongs the process.
Keeps us stuck in those old patterns.
Another common belief is, I have the willpower to resist temptation.
Oh, we all want to believe that one, don't we?
But we often overestimate our capacity to withstand those alluring distractions and cravings.
It's like thinking we can wander through a bakery completely unscathed when we're trying to avoid sugar.
Right. Our willpower is often weaker than we'd like to believe.
Especially when faced with a warm chocolate chip cookie.
Oh, yeah, those are dangerous.
So Goldsmith suggests building structures and systems that support our goals.
Taking some of the pressure off our willpower.
Like surrounding ourselves with healthy options so we're less likely to succumb to those unhealthy cravings.
Exactly. It's about making it easier to make good choices.
So instead of relying solely on willpower,
which can fluctuate throughout the day,
we create an environment that makes it more likely that we'll succeed.
it's about setting ourselves up for success.
This brings to mind another belief that often holds us back. I can change anytime I want.
We like to think of change as a simple choice we can make at any moment.
But it rarely unfolds that way, does it?
Change takes time, takes effort.
It's a process, not an event.
Exactly.
And it requires consistent effort.
And a willingness to navigate those inevitable setbacks.
It's like assuming we can instantly become morning people simply by deciding to wake up earlier.
It takes time to rewire those ingrained habits.
Another belief that can sabotage our progress is, I shouldn't need help and structure.
There's often a sense of pride that makes us resist asking for assistance.
It's like that seasoned driver who refuses to ask for directions even when completely lost.
They'd rather wander aimlessly than admit they need help.
But even the most successful people rely on coaches, mentors, and support networks, don't they?
Absolutely. We don't have to do everything alone.
Recognizing that can be incredibly empowering.
And those connections, those relationships, they can really amplify our effort.
They provide a fresh perspective and encouragement when we need it most.
Exactly. They can help us see things that we might not be able to see on our own.
And then there's that seductive belief in a magical epiphany that will instantly transform our lives.
Oh, yeah, we love those stories of dramatic overnight transformations.
But those are usually more fiction than reality.
Goldsmith cautions us against relying on those instant conversion experiences.
Because lasting change rarely happens that way.
It's about more than just a fleeting moment of inspiration.
And another common belief is, my efforts will be fairly rewarded.
We tend to operate under the assumption that if we work hard, good things will happen.
But the world doesn't always work that way, does it?
Sadly, no.
So Goldsmith encourages us to shift our focus to intrinsic motivation,
To finding satisfaction in the journey itself.
regardless of external validation or rewards.
When we're driven by a deeper sense of purpose, those setbacks feel less defeating.
Okay, and speaking of those unexpected moments, let's circle back to the idea of environmental triggers.
How they can either support or sabotage our efforts to change.
It's fascinating how those subtle cues in our surroundings can have such a powerful impact on our behavior.
They really do.
Like, I think we've all experienced those moments where we're suddenly overcome by a craving for junk food, even though we'd resolved to eat healthier.
It's those environmental triggers at work.
Goldsmith encourages us to be more mindful of those triggers.
And to consciously design our surroundings to support the changes we want to make.
Like if we're trying to eat healthier, we might remove those tempting snacks from our pantry.
And replace them with healthier options.
Right. And if we're trying to be more productive,
We might create a dedicated workspace free from distractions.
it's about recognizing that our environment isn't just a passive backdrop.
It's an active participant in our journey to change.
It's shaping our thoughts, our emotions, and ultimately our actions.
We have much more control over our environment than we realize.
Okay, so we've talked about all these great concepts and ideas from triggers.
But how do we actually put them into practice?
Yeah, how do we translate these insights into real tangible change in our own lives?
Well, Goldsmith, he gives us a ton of practical advice, and he really stresses the importance of starting with specific behaviors that we want to modify.
So instead of setting those vague goals like, I want to be healthier,
We need to pinpoint concrete actions.
like I'm going to walk for 30 minutes every day,
Or I'm going to swap out sugary drinks for water.
it's about breaking down those larger aspirations into manageable, actionable steps.
That's how we set ourselves up for success.
And he also emphasizes the importance of measuring our progress along the way.
Right, tracking those daily walks, noting how much water we drink.
Even journaling about those new behaviors and how they make us feel.
Those records not only allow us to see how far we've come,
But they also serve as a powerful source of motivation.
reminding us that we're capable of making those changes.
It's like we're creating a visual representation of our commitment.
And speaking of support, Goldsmith highlights the power of coaching as a vital component in creating lasting change.
Yeah, we often underestimate the impact of having someone in our corner.
Someone to provide guidance, encouragement, and maybe a little nudge when we need it.
It doesn't have to be a formal coaching relationship. It could be a friend, a family member, or even a colleague.
Anyone who believes in us and is willing to hold us accountable.
And Goldsmith stresses that this principle applies not just to like those traditional self-improvement goals.
Right, it's equally important when we're navigating those interpersonal challenges.
Like, remember the story of Emily, who achieved amazing success on her weight loss journey with her uncle serving as her informal coach?
Oh yeah, her uncle's simple act of checking in with her each day made all the difference.
It provided that accountability and encouragement that she needed to stay on track.
It really reinforces the idea that we don't have to go it alone on this journey.
Sharing our goals with someone supportive can make a huge difference.
Absolutely, it allows them to be a part of our process and celebrate our victories with us.
Now, Goldsmith also reminds us about the profound impact of our environment.
Our surroundings can either support or sabotage our best efforts.
Yeah, we might have all the willpower in the world, But if our environment is constantly bombarding us with
This
temptations,
could be an uphill battle.
it's like trying to stick to a healthy diet when your pantry is full of junk food.
Or trying to focus on work in a chaotic, cluttered space.
So Goldsmith encourages us to become architects of our environments.
To consciously design our surroundings in a way that supports the changes we want to make.
So it's about removing those temptations, creating a dedicated workspace.
Even curating our social media feeds to minimize negativity and comparison.
It's about recognizing that our environment isn't just a passive backdrop.
It's an active force that shapes our thoughts, emotions, and ultimately our actions.
And he also reminds us that our willpower is a finite resource.
It gets depleted throughout the day as we make decisions, resist temptations, and deal with stress.
It's like a muscle that gets tired after a workout.
Exactly. That's why we're more susceptible to impulsive choices and negative emotions later in the day.
So that explains those late-night cravings for junk food, or those moments when we snap at our loved ones after a long day.
Goldsmith suggests that we strategically structure our day to minimize that ego depletion.
By tackling those demanding tasks or those difficult conversations earlier in the day.
When our willpower is at its peak.
And just as important is making sure we prioritize rest and recovery.
Those activities that replenish our mental and emotional energy.
Whether it's meditation, spending time in nature, or simply taking a break from screens.
It's about recognizing that self-care isn't selfish.
It's essential for sustaining our efforts to change.
Goldsmith reminds us that we're not machines. We need to treat ourselves with compassion.
And this brings to mind that story about Jim, who consciously chose to be a patient and attentive listener for his wife.
Even after a super stressful day at work.
It's a powerful example of how we can choose to act in alignment with our values.
Even when we're feeling exhausted or frustrated.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into triggers today, I think it's helpful to distill these key takeaways into a concise 10-point summary.
Yeah, let's give our listeners a roadmap for creating lasting change.
Number one, recognize the power of your environment. It's constantly shaping your behavior, whether you realize it or not.
Number two, embrace structure and active questions. They provide clarity, accountability, and support on your journey.
Number three, move beyond good enough and those pro bono excuses. Your relationships deserve your best effort.
Number four, cultivate awareness and engagement. Those are the ultimate goals of behavioral change.
Number five, challenge those limiting beliefs that sabotage your progress. Remember, change is possible.
Number six, understand the impact of ego depletion. Structure your day to minimize its effects and prioritize rest.
Number seven, identify those specific behaviors you want to change. Break them down into manageable steps and track your progress.
Number eight, enlist the support of a coach, mentor, or accountability partner to guide and encourage you.
Number nine, create an environment that supports your goals. Remove those temptations, establish returns, and surround yourself with positive influences.
And number 10, remember that change is a journey, not a destination. Be patient, celebrate your progress, and never give up on becoming the person you aspire to be.
Goldsmith's Triggers offers such a valuable roadmap for anyone seeking lasting positive change.
It's filled with those profound concepts, relatable stories, and actionable strategies.
And we hope this deep dive has inspired you to embark on your own journey of transformation.
Until next time, keep diving deep, and remember, you have the power to create the life you desire.